Good morning. This is your Executive Intelligence Summary for February 19th, 2026. Today, we're tracking a massive turning point for AI in India, and we've got some pretty critical updates on the government and corporate fronts as well.
So here's our operational roadmap. We'll kick things off with India's big AI push. Then we'll zoom out to macro, politics, and governance. From there, it's corporate and business intelligence, a look at what the editorials are saying, and we'll finish up with the closing market snapshot. Let's get right to it.
All right, our lead story. India's AI ambitions just hit a huge new gear at the AI Impact Summit. What's so interesting is that we're seeing these powerful, homegrown AI models launching at the very same moment that global tech giants are announcing major partnerships in the country. The big picture here? India is dead set on building its own AI powerhouse. And at the same time, it's writing the rulebook for how everyone else gets to play in its sandbox. So, what does this actually mean strategically? Well, India is playing a fascinating double game here. On one track, it's all about building its own, independent AI models from the ground up. But on the other track, it's forging these crucial partnerships with international firms to get the essential building blocks. We're talking raw computing power and development tools. It's a really smart balancing act, and it's something to watch. And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, Servam AI, a Bangalore-based outfit, just pulled the curtain back on a foundational model with 105 billion parameters. That is huge. And it's not just about size. It's tailored for India, built to understand 22 different Indian languages. It's also designed for what they call agentic use cases. Basically, you can give the AI a complex goal, and it has the smarts to figure out the steps to achieve it all on its own. And this is where you can really feel the ecosystem just exploding. The summit wasn't just a few big players showing off. No, this was a massive, bustling marketplace. You had something like 600 startups and over 300 exhibitors there, all vying for a piece of this absolutely booming industry. But, it's not all a perfectly smooth ride. The summit also put a spotlight on some serious growing pains. If you're a startup, the price of admission is incredibly steep. Exhibitors were shelling out anywhere from 15 to 50 lakh rupees. That's about 18,000 to 60,000 US dollars, just to get a booth for the week. That is a massive barrier for new companies trying to make their mark. And of course, with all this new AI power comes the big question of control. India is trying to carve out its own third way for AI regulation. They're pushing new rules. Things like requiring clear labels on AI-generated content and demanding harmful material gets taken down within 3 hours. But the central challenge, the real open question, is this: how do you achieve enforcement at scale while preserving rights? That's what everyone is trying to figure out. Okay, let's zoom out now to the broader national landscape. In our macro, politics, and governance section, we're tracking 4 key updates covering everything from aviation rules to judicial policy. First up, things are about to get a little less chaotic in the skies. The Aviation Authority, the DGCA, is proposing a new rule to let airlines ban disruptive flyers right on the spot for 30 days. And finally, they are getting very specific about what disruptive means. We're talking about smoking, tampering with emergency exits, shouting slogans, and yes, even kicking the back of the seat in front of you. Over at the Supreme Court, they're navigating 2 very sensitive issues. On one hand, they're developing new guidelines for judges to ensure more compassion and sensitivity, and this comes in direct response to an order in a sexual assault case involving a minor. On the other hand, they're cautiously looking into whether using a racial slur should be classified as a distinct hate crime, though they're being very careful to avoid stoking polarization. Now, let's head over to Odisha, where a state-level policy change is getting attention from the central government. The state has decided to dissolve special cells that were set up to help tribal communities with their land claims under the Forest Rights Act. And this is a big deal because, as you can see from the numbers, there's already a significant backlog. About 20% of all claims filed, that's 1 in 5, are still pending. And a final quick hit from the states. In Gujarat, the government just tabled its largest budget ever, over 4 lakh crore rupees, with a heavy focus on tech and infrastructure. Meanwhile, in Bihar, a very different conversation is happening. Political allies are now openly urging the government to review the state's prohibition policy, citing lost revenue and a thriving black market. Okay, let's shift to the corporate world. We've got 3 stories for you today that really paint a picture of the current business climate. A clean energy firm that's suddenly white hot, a consumer trend that might surprise you, and a major brand facing a serious trust issue. First off, Wellspin New Energy is on an absolute tear. Just back in November, the company was reportedly looking to sell a stake at a valuation around $100 million. Fast forward to today, and binding bids are coming in with expectations that have shot up to around $250 million. It's just a crystal clear sign of how much capital is flooding into the clean energy space right now. Now, here's a consumer data point you might not have guessed. In India's fragrance market, it's actually men who are the main drivers of growth. They now account for 60% of the market share. And it's not just about volume. They're also leading the charge toward premiumization, buying more high-end products and pushing the whole market upscale. And finally, a challenging situation for Ola Electric. We're hearing about growing unease among its investors, and it's about more than just one slow sales month. The core of the problem seems to be an erosion of trust. The company has repeatedly shifted its targets and guidance on everything from production to revenue, and that inconsistency is starting to cause a real problem. This has moved beyond a business challenge. It's now looking like a crisis of credibility. All right, let's turn to the editorial pages. Two big debates are unfolding. First, can a mega infrastructure project in a fragile ecosystem ever be truly sustainable? And second, what on earth is going on with both cash and digital payments hitting record highs at the exact same time? One editorial is taking a close look at the massive Great Nicobar Island project. The author's main point is that we need to move past a simplistic development versus environment argument. Instead, the real question should be whether the proposed environmental safeguards are anywhere near rigorous enough for a project of this immense scale. The warning is that simply ticking off compliance boxes just isn't going to cut it here. Now for a real economic puzzle. We're seeing cash in circulation hit a record high. At the same time, UPI transactions also hit a record high. How does that make sense? The whole narrative is that digital is supposed to be replacing cash, but these numbers, well, they're telling a very different and much more complicated story. The authors of this piece float a really interesting theory: compliance anxiety. They suggest that thousands of GST notices sent out to small businesses based on their digital transaction data might be scaring some people back into using cash. Their core argument is that we need to find a way to, quote, preserve UPI's ease of living gains while improving how compliance is signaled and implemented. It's a tricky balance to strike. And that brings us to our final section. Let's take a look at the closing market snapshot. Here are the verified numbers from the close of trading. The markets finished in positive territory. The Sensex was up over 283 points, and the Nifty gained nearly 94. In foreign exchange, the rupee was fairly stable against the dollar, pound, and euro. And in commodities, oil saw a slight uptick, closing just under $68 a barrel. That concludes today's intelligence summary.